guys, it's Chelsea from The Financial Diet here with brand new glasses, which is extremely exciting for me and I imagine for you as well. And today I'm here to talk to you about a personal rule that I have that I like to call the rule of 4. As you guys obviously know, the past 2 years have been really dominated for Lauren and I by TFD because obviously we started our own business and it's exciting and it's thrilling and it's an amazing creative project, but it's really easy to feel like our lives are just dominated by work. And as I've mentioned before in other videos, I'm someone who's very prone to anxiety, so having a job that's essentially 24/7, if you allow it to be, has been really tough for me. And I noticed late last year that I was really kind of getting into this horrible cycle where I was constantly riddled with anxiety about work, not just about like the day-to-day and projects and all that stuff, but really about who I was on a professional level. When you're an entrepreneur and when you're a creative, it's so easy for you to define yourself and for people to define you by your work. I mean, in theory, you're doing what you love. Shouldn't that be everything you need? Shouldn't that be like the ultimate source of happiness? And sometimes the answer to that is yes, but it also can't fulfill every need. Even if you have your quote unquote dream job, which we've discussed on the channel doesn't really exist. Most of you have probably been in a social situation before where you're meeting someone new and their first question to you is, what do you do? And it's really easy to slip into just talking about what you do for work, because even though that's not the whole answer, that's how everyone's trained to think of it. And the further along you get in your career and the more you enjoy and invest in your career, the more powerful that definition becomes. I've talked on the channel before about how I used to be, for lack of a better word, a total fuck up at all of my old jobs. Before I started writing professionally, I got fired a ton. I never took them seriously. And I obviously wouldn't go back to being that person, and I think I was wrong to have behaved that way. But one thing that I can take from that version of myself was how much I did not let my job define who I was. When I would meet someone in that time in my life and they'd ask me what I did, I would tell them like 5 different things I was doing, and maybe one of them might be work, but it didn't have to be, because that's who I truly felt that I was all of those things. And that's something that I really wanted to get back, especially when I noticed my anxiety about work really spiraling out of control. So my rule of 4, which I put in place to fight this, is very simple. The rule of 4 is a challenge you make to yourself that at any time you have to have 4 concrete, tangible things that are equally important to you, which give you a ton of fulfillment and which most importantly define who you are. And one of those things can be work, but it doesn't have to be. For me, right now, my 4 things are work, my partnerships, and that, you know, I obviously have my domestic partnership with Mark and I have my work partnership with Lauren, my traveling to see friends and family who are very far away at all times, and my cooking, which is something that I do every single day. Now, these things change and rotate, but at any given time, I have these 4 things that are incredibly important to me, and I wouldn't sacrifice one for the other. For example, if any of them kind of came in conflict with my job, I would have to seriously question my job. Forcing myself to think about these things in a very concrete way and to assess how I'm growing with them, just like how I'm growing in my job, reminds me that every day I'm developing so much more as a person than just professionally. I think it's a wonderful, beautiful thing to really feel passionately about your job, but I also think we set up this terrible dichotomy where once you find your quote-unquote real job, you'll be fulfilled and that will be all you really need and that will be what you can focus on entirely. Obviously, you shouldn't hate your job, but it's important to remind yourself that even a job you really like can only be one part of who you are. As an entrepreneur and a creative and someone who does things that they are very passionate about every day, it's important that I constantly be forcing myself to divide my energy and not completely drain it from the things that also need my attention. The more I focus on my rule of 4 and the more I look at how I'm growing in those different domains as opposed to just at my job, the happier I am. And next year, I might have a totally new focus that becomes one of my 4 things. Let's say I get this hobby that totally takes me over next year. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I have room for it, and I know that how I'm growing in this is just as important as how I'm growing at work. You should love your job if you can, but more importantly, you should love your whole life. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to go to thefinancialdiet.com for more. Bye!